She sat down on the soft couch, her nervous movements accompanied by characteristic sniffling, and she weakly attempted to oppose her domineering mother. "Mom," she began, her voice barely trembling, "I don't want to marry this old man. I've never even seen him and feel no love for him." Her pleas were filled with trembling. However, Jacqueline only became even angrier, looking at her daughter with unwavering determination. "Don't anger me, child," she sternly said. "You don't even know who this Fred is. He's a businessman, a banker, and he's only 28. And you, dear, who are you? You've already squandered your chance, and how do you plan to live and on what money? With him, you'll be living in luxury. And you'll thank me later," Jacqueline shouted with the authority of a dictator. Rachel didn't back down. "But I wanted to become an educator like Dad and teach children. I was planning to apply next year. I'm only 18, Rachel desperately interjected, fighting for her dreams and the future she saw so differently. The woman flared up even stronger, her voice filled with anger. "What, haven't we already spent a fortune on you? Costumes, competitions. You want us to support you for another 4 years, Chi Noi. You know how we live. Your dad barely makes any money, and it's all for nothing. And you're the same. One educator is enough for me. It's all settled." Rachel tried once again to express her doubts and desires, but her mother's words were like an unyielding stone, not open to discussion. "We're having dinner with your colleague on Sunday," her mother said, reinforcing her position. "We'll talk about the wedding as well. Look, do whatever you want with your life, but make sure that Fred wants to marry you. Go wash up, and don't cry," her mother concluded, leaving her daughter with a heavy heart. Rachel walked to her room. On the wall hung the ill-fated bright red ballroom costume that she despised, just like the color red in general. But, as always, nobody asked for her opinion. The costume was chosen by her mother, based on her own taste, ignoring her daughter's protests. And now the result was clear. Rachel didn't feel comfortable in it, as if it were alien, not reflecting her true essence. She felt constricted, nervous, all her movements were unnatural, and she couldn't perform at her best in competitions. But how could she explain this to her mother? The girl took off the costume with a mixture of sadness and anger, encountering the wall between her dreams and her mother's expectations. From her earliest childhood, little Rachel gave the impression of being a delicate and tender girl, like a slender stem swaying in the wind. She possessed a stunning beauty that amazed everyone with its flawless charm, enormous blue eyes resembling 2 deep lakes, surrounded by long, thick eyelashes, full lips and a figure created in the image of swan-like grace. Her long hair, like a waterfall, cascaded down to her shoulders, and its weak-colored shade added to her allure. Her waist was so graceful that it seemed one could encircle it with a single hand. In terms of her character, the girl presented herself as an extremely timid and reserved individual, always polite and cultured, like a quiet gray mouse. However, despite this shyness, a brilliant mind was hidden within her little chest. She excelled academically and impressed with her knowledge. In their family, the dominant role was played by her mother, Jacqueline, who skillfully managed the finances and gave directions on where to go and what to do. Rachel's father, Wright, was a history teacher. He harbored tender feelings for his daughter and was somewhat afraid of her brilliance, never engaging in conflicts and avoiding family disputes. For Wright, making decisions was much simpler than enduring the endless shouts and reproaches from his wife, Jacqueline. Wright, a man of calm disposition, possessed a considerable reservoir of patience when it came to Jacqueline. Despite her frequent irritations, he affectionately referred to his daughter as Little Flower and often found the strength to console and comfort her, even when she had recently started showing signs of irritation. Jacqueline, on the other hand, considered her husband an absolute failure, incapable of earning enough money. She did not spare him in her criticisms and regarded him as a useless presence. When Jacqueline realized that her daughter was also beginning to acquire similar character traits, her anger only grew. There wasn't a single aunt in the family, and this also irritated Jacqueline. She convinced herself that if only she were as energetic and determined as she believed herself to be, the family situation would be completely different. While Rachel tenderly loved her father and fully understood how difficult things were for him, they often strolled together in the park, sat by the window, and Wright would tell her captivating stories, and she hung on to his every word. Her dad was always kind and gentle with her, and their souls resonated harmoniously, like music, strengthening their bond even further. This infuriated Jacqueline, even after her husband's death, and she was never able to repair her relationship with her daughter. In response to her daughter's dramatic behavioral changes, the mother decided to employ a new approach. She tried to relax and impose her own standards of behavior on Anne, but unfortunately, this only worsened the situation. Her daughter began to cry, and isolation from the outside world became her routine response to stress and misunderstanding. In light of this, the mother made the decision to enroll Anne in a ballroom dance school, hoping that it might help her break free from her insecurities and become more sociable. At first, the girl felt out of her element. Her movements were clumsy and stiff, but her experienced instructor, Grace, quickly found a way to connect with her. Rachel's talents, her hard work, and perseverance began to yield results, and gradually, the girl started showing excellent performance. She particularly enjoyed the Viennese waltz and the foxtrot. She would close her eyes and immerse herself fully in the world of dance, displaying graceful turns, flexibility, and soft, feminine movements. The rumba presented a more challenging test, but here she found a reliable dance partner, Ben. He complimented her, supported and encouraged her, and also took on a significant portion of responsibility for the complex movements, creating a sense of comfort and confidence for Rachel on the dance floor. Anna tried not to pay attention to Ben, although she had long been in love with him and dreamt that he would notice her feelings and make the first move. Without deciding to confess her feelings to him, Anna continued to hide her emotions. Her best friend from the dance school, Audrey, was a truly vibrant and self-assured personality, radiating a fiery passion for success. They competed with each other in training, but each of them excelled in her own style. Anna honed her mastery with diligence, grace, and femininity until her movements became automatic. Audrey, on the other hand, captivated attention with her charisma and energy, and everything seemed to come easily to her. But the moment was approaching when both girls had to confess their feelings to Ben. Anna was still hesitant, and she could only sigh deeply and blush, averting her gaze. Audrey, with self-assurance and without delay, decided to win the guy over right in front of Anna. All of this was happening on the eve of the most important competition, the results of which determined the selection of dancers for outstanding collectives. Anna felt overwhelmed and disheartened. Everything was slipping through her fingers. Her dances were falling apart, and she could barely keep the rhythm. Moreover, her costume was far from perfect. Grace was shocked by what was happening. How could this happen to a girl on whom such high hopes were placed? She couldn't even make it into the top 10 participants, and it was a heavy blow to Anna. Gradually, it became clear that Anna's grand and noble dream of a great career and a glittering future had shattered and scattered into small pieces, like sand in her hands. It pierced her heart bitterly and painfully, like a sharp needle penetrating deep into her soul. She had invested so many years of hard work and sacrifices into this dream, and now, as if by magic, it all seemed in vain. Unfair circumstances had taken away everything she had passionately hoped for. Anna desperately wished for someone to come to her aid, listen to her, and perhaps even pity her. She needed someone to understand how important it was for her. However, when she returned home, she was met with unsympathetic criticism and hurtful words from her mother. A scandal erupted loudly, like a thunderstorm, and her mother's words struck like lightning, burning with fire. To her great surprise, this incredible scenario was further complicated by the topic of marriage. As always, as if by the laws of nature, decisions were made for her in advance, without giving her the slightest chance to express her own opinions or desires. If Anna had a more assertive character, she could have stood up and fought for her place in the studio, even if it meant risking everything else. Unfortunately, she succumbed to inertia and submitted to her mother's despotic will. Her own sense of self seemed lost somewhere inside, overwhelmed by circumstances and the authority of others. Before meeting her fiancé, Anna spent the whole week in nervous anticipation, barely sleeping. Almost all of her dreams were nightmares, dark and horrifying, where the repulsive man reached out to her with his oily hands, like something looming over her. Anna would scream in her sleep, waking up with her body drenched in cold sweat, and her heart beating wildly, like a bird trying to break free from its cage. At last, the long-anticipated evening of the meeting had arrived, and they headed to a luxurious restaurant. To make the evening as comfortable as possible for her daughter, the mother allowed Anna to choose her own dress and create a hairstyle that reflected her own taste. When they entered the restaurant accompanied by their parents, the guests were already there and began introducing themselves. It was a big surprise for Anna to see that her future fiancé was nothing like the dreadful expectations she had built up in her mind. In reality, he was a confident young man, impeccably dressed and looking very stylish. His height, slim figure, long brunette hair, a strong chin, and a dimple on his cheek all contributed to a rather attractive appearance. He also impressed with his politeness and good manners, not neglecting chivalrous gestures, which couldn't help but leave an impression on Anna. Until this meeting, she had virtually no experience in interacting with men, except for her fellow ballet school classmates and her secret infatuation with Ben. For the first time in her life, she found herself so close to a representative of the opposite sex. Fred had been attracted to this young girl for a long time. Their first encounter happened at an event where girls from a special school were performing. Even then, Anna's tenderness and delicacy had captivated him. Her movements were graceful, like a smooth dance. She created art. Fred remembered her, and since then, he had often seen this stranger in his dreams because she was an indescribable enigma and a source of inspiration to him. He made the decision that he would do anything to win her heart. At that moment, he had grown tired of the company of glamorous and liberated ladies who seemed to cling to him like flies, and his thirst for purity and innocence knew no bounds. At first sight, it was evident that he would become her first and perhaps true man. The pursuit of Anna revived in him a long-forgotten zest and courage, causing the blood to pulse through his veins faster. When Anna entered the restaurant with trembling legs, he secretly smiled but kept it unnoticed. She simply dazzled him with her charm and perfection. Her precise figure and a dress that gracefully embraced her body, a soft lilac color, only emphasized her deep turquoise eyes, like two boundless oceans. Long golden hair cascaded onto her shoulders, creating the impression of thick and soft curls, and her cheeks had a blush of innocence. The guy realized that pursuing her with aggression, like an experienced conqueror, would only push away this wild paradise bird. He chose a subtler and more calculated path. Emulating a cat that plays with a mouse, he alternated between luring her and gently inviting her, giving skillful compliments, and occasionally switching to business mode, not allowing any room for liberties. He showered Anna with enormous baskets of bright scarlet roses and delicate violets, inviting her to concerts and festivals. At the same time, he maintained a distance and didn't rush things, guarding himself against hasty steps. This game brought him pleasure, and he invested all his skill into it, anticipating the finale, which, as he thought, wouldn't be long in coming. Anna, on her part, was completely immersed in Fred. He appeared to her as if he were a prince from a fairy tale, relying on his politeness, intelligence, and gallantry, and his compliments fell on her like a gentle rain of words. She felt like she had found true happiness and believed it would last forever. Their wedding was splendid and magnificent, gathering all their delighted guests. The long-awaited wedding night turned out to be divine. Fred paid special attention to Anna, aiming to make this important moment in their lives particularly unforgettable. He was gentle and even a little romantic, giving his young heart a significant value. The newlyweds moved to live in a luxurious mansion, and Fred's mother was not thrilled with this idea. It was hard for her to understand how they tied themselves to such an extravagant life and such unusual people. Finally, she had gained confidence that she had introduced her niece to a good person, and she now had peace of mind. Fred's parents expressed their full approval of their son's choice, even though the girl he had chosen seemed like a decent person. However, in their hearts, there was hope that perhaps Fred would soon leave behind his wild passions and find a life partner suitable for his status. The first few months of their relationship were filled with complete happiness. They couldn't get enough of each other, and every moment was filled with passion and tenderness. He shared his knowledge and experience with her, and she listened attentively, expressing her love in whispers, and he responded with equally tender displays of affection. Over time, Anna began to grate on Fred. He had managed to win the coveted trophy and satisfy his desire for her young, attractive body. He realized that his wife molded like clay in his hands, becoming whatever he desired. She instantly fulfilled all his whims, gazing intently into his eyes, forgiving his sarcasm, and striving to please him in every detail. From the very beginning, she attracted him, but then her boundless devotion began to irritate him. He craved passion, lively emotions, and dynamism, but she only offered him peace and tranquility. Soon, he realized that he didn't feel genuine feelings for Anna. After the passion faded, she stopped being interesting to him. With each passing day, Fred returned home from work increasingly alert, ignoring sleep and food. He began to show blatant rudeness towards his wife. and he realized that she had no intention of responding in kind. There wasn't even room for resentment in him. Anna couldn't understand what was happening, what her fault was. The more she tried to please Fred, the worse she fared. He would erupt in anger, get irritated over the slightest thing, and lose his temper with her. Anna had no idea what to do. Talking to her mother was pointless, and she had no friends or close ones after Audrey's betrayal. It seemed as though she had to become disillusioned with female friendship altogether. After 6 months of living together, when each day seemed more depressing and burdensome, they both began to feel truly weighed down. For her, each day got worse, and the once slender girl seemed even more exhausted. Her tense and irritated husband, who had uttered not a few harsh words, said at one point, "My God, what have you become? What happened to you? Later today, you will definitely go to the doctor, and I'll arrange for a medic to take you." After long months of anxiety and despair, Rachel was finally referred to a women's clinic. There, the doctor, looking into her frightened eyes, made a shocking announcement. She was pregnant, and the term of this pregnancy was quite significant. In the first moment, Rachel simply couldn't believe her luck, and tears of joy streamed from her eyes. She thought that Fred would finally hear this news and be happy that she was giving him an heir. She naively hoped that everything in their lives would go back to how it was before, and he would start taking care of her and the future child. Rachel put in maximum effort to prepare a lavish dinner. She lit aromatic candles, carefully chose an outfit that made her even more attractive, and waited for Fred to share the joyful news with him. The wall clock slowly slid toward midnight, and Rachel had to wait until midnight. When Fred finally appeared, he was clearly under the influence of alcohol, and the scent of women's perfume clung to him. He looked bewildered at the set table and at his wife standing before him as if nothing had happened. Despite his condition, Fred still sat at the table as if nothing had occurred and with a smirk said, "What's this, a celebration? Can't you sleep, Rachel?" Rachel decided to share her joy and began, "Fred, my love, I have wonderful news. You know why it's been so hard for me all this time. I'm pregnant, and you'll soon be a father. Isn't that wonderful? I'm so happy." With excitement and joy, she rushed to hug her husband. However, he abruptly pushed her away, expressing his displeasure. "Well, you can't come up with anything better," he muttered with these words, slammed the door, and went to sleep, leaving Rachel with her happiness and joy in solitude. Rachel cried the entire night. Tears of endless hurt and bitterness flowed as if they were never going to stop. A restless storm was brewing in her soul. She sincerely couldn't understand what was happening with her husband, why he had acted that way, and for what reason she had been left in this despair. However, it didn't even occur to her to take any action on her part. From childhood, she had grown accustomed to going with the flow, yielding to someone else's will, and even to her own fate. Throughout her entire pregnancy, Rachel largely avoided her husband, seeking to stay as far away from his attention as possible. The intimacy between them had completely disappeared, as if it had been obliterated forever. Fred only looked at his wife's huge belly and swollen legs with disgust. His thoughts became increasingly indifferent. "It's even disgusting to look at a cow, and why did I marry this fool? I should have slept with that naive simpleton instead, and that would have been it." And when, against all expectations of the doctors, a baby girl was born, Fred completely lost control of himself. In a fit of rage, he shouted throughout the maternity ward, "You said it would be a son, and what's this? But what more can I expect from you? The heir I need, and you can't even give birth to him. I didn't want a girl, I didn't want this. I need a real heir, not a crying girl." The nurses tried to console Rachel, saying, "Don't worry, men often react this way. We've seen many similar cases here. He just hasn't realized it yet. Once he holds his daughter in his arms, he'll love her, you'll see." But nothing happened. Fred not only didn't thaw, but he also didn't attempt to get closer to his little daughter. In her every cry, he saw only a source of a headache, and his feelings remained indifferent to this infant. Due to the baby girl's incessant crying, Fred developed a pounding headache, and he couldn't find a way to improve the situation. He exploded in anger and directed his fury at his wife, who was attempting to soothe the infant as if she had been crying for her entire life. Rachel, having done everything she could to comfort and cradle the baby in her arms, decisively retreated to the farthest room so as not to interfere with Fred. The man showed no concern whatsoever. He didn't even consider helping his wife care for the child, didn't offer to take the baby for a walk or hold her. His sole pleasure was that he could barely hear his daughters crying and could sleep in peace. Rachel seemed to have become entirely irrelevant to him. His wife and daughter became a heavy burden for the man, especially as Fred had met another stunning beauty. Her name was Kate, and she was the daughter of a well-known entrepreneur. Fred fell in love with her instantly. Sexy, with an outstanding bust and a mass of unruly red curls, she exuded self-confidence. Impeccably dressed, she knew her worth and presented herself skillfully. She didn't pay any attention to Fred at all. What can you expect from him? Yes, he's wealthy, but he's married, and he even has a child. Fred tried every possible way to win Kate over, and soon he completely forgot about his wife and child. He rarely visited home, and his wanderings left noticeable traces, which he didn't hide. He perceived women as if they existed on a different plane, empty space, or even a bothersome misunderstanding. He was cold towards his daughter, becoming irritated when she tried to snuggle up to him and kiss him. He sought to get rid of her presence as soon as possible by distracting her with toys. In return, Rachel silently submitted to all his demands, having long ago accepted his cold attitude. However, now Rachel had found the meaning of life, little Lisa, the light in her life. Rachel caressed every little finger on her daughter's hand and breathed in the sweet scent of childhood. She adored every freckle on the baby. Outwardly, Lisa was the spitting image of her father, tall, dark-haired, and lively. Her personality was nothing like her mother's, and at an early age, she realized that her mother adored her while her father despised her. She felt it, but she wasn't about to stay silent. The more she pestered her father with questions about why he didn't love her and her mother, the tenser the atmosphere in the family became. When Lisa started first grade, something unexpected happened. Her daughter deeply sympathized with her mother and couldn't understand why she remained silent, why she didn't argue with her father and didn't hinder him in his cruelty. She begged her daughter not to interfere. Lisa felt that the future promised only deeper darkness and hopelessness, but even in her young years, she didn't give up without a fight. Small but remarkably persistent, she voiced her doubts to her mother. "Why is Dad so indifferent to us?" she insisted, and her little voice carried a thirst for the truth. "We can't endlessly hide our feelings and stay silent about the problems, Mom. I worry a lot for you," the girl sadly said, hugging Rachel as if trying to create a protective barrier against hardships and sorrow, as well as the negativity and hurt that had accumulated over the years. One day, these feelings burst out, like a storm that could no longer be contained in the woman's soul. Fred, as usual, arrived around midnight. Regarding Kate, he did manage to seduce her, and every day he lied, saying that he would divorce his wife. To his surprise, his wife stood at the doorway and immediately, without preamble, asked, "Fred, we need to talk. This can't go on like this. You have someone else, you're being unfaithful to me, and even our daughter feels that you don't love us. Please, tell me the truth. I'm begging you." After agonizing 6 long years, Fred finally couldn't contain the truth any longer and summoned the courage to express his true feelings. "Yes, I have another woman whom I love. Your presence has become unbearable for me a long time ago. I no longer want to see you here, as something is always amiss. So, both of you, get out of my house. You've grown accustomed to an easy life. Now, since it's turned out this way, be silent and leave my home." His words fell upon the young woman and her daughter like an icy rain, and they remained standing in the corridor, sheltering themselves in mutual sorrow and tears. Fred, like a beast, once again displayed his brutality, pushing Anya with savage force, and then callously slamming the door. The woman, on the verge of consciousness from pain, hit her elbow against the nearest surface, swaying from acute agony. Even in that moment, he didn't cast a glance at her, as tears obscured her view of the world. With great difficulty, step by step, she made her way to her room, where Rachel, upon hearing her mother's cries, began crying loudly and fearfully. The little daughter rushed to her mother, wanting to comfort and protect her from the merciless world that had so cruelly descended upon their family. They sat together, embracing, consoling each other. Their hands ran through each other's hair as they spoke. "It's him. Yes, I heard everything. I hate him. Why won't you leave him? He doesn't love us. You're so beautiful, Mom." The daughter pleaded with her mother to consider divorce. But the woman, as if justifying herself, said, "Lisa, we can't talk like that. He's still your dad. And where would we go? Grandma won't take us in. There's nowhere to go, you understand. We have to endure, my little one. Maybe Dad will change, and everything will get better for us." She comforted her daughter, although she knew all too well that Fred would never change. A month after that tumultuous argument, during which everyone had already noticed the changes in Fred and Lisa's relationship, an unexpected evening arrived. Fred suddenly returned from work earlier than usual. His eyes were sober and determined. He approached Lisa, looking at her seriously, and said, "Perhaps it's time to reassess the situation. You, Lisa, have been regarded as a perpetual problem, but you do deserve attention. Listen carefully, I'm going to take a step. I'm leaving the past behind and marrying Kate. I love her. You are no longer relevant to me. Look, start packing your things. We're moving to a new home. I've bought us a modest nest, but it's ours. Say thank you, Lisa." These words hit Lisa like a bolt from the blue, and she couldn't grasp what was happening. Fred exclaimed, "Are you just standing there like a statue? Come on, move faster, faster. Otherwise, I might change my mind and send you out on the streets, Lisa." A mixture of fear and bewilderment overcame her, and she began hurriedly gathering her and her daughter's belongings, stuffing them into suitcases. A torrent of questions rained down upon her, but Fred left no time for explanations. "Mom, where are we going, and how long will we stay there? Should I take my toys or just Teddy?" asked the little daughter, filled with anxiety and confusion. The mother faced a difficult task, to explain to the poor, frightened child, even though she herself was scared. In the courtyard, their chauffeur, named Fred, was already waiting for them, and with a malicious tone, he scolded them, saying, "You don't plan on dawdling with the new house, do you? Here are the documents for the house. Hurry up, I don't have time," and he handed over a folder containing the documents. Even in such a moment, the woman tried to soften her husband and reason with him, saying, "What kind of behavior is this? Remember our daughter, this is our family. You can't do this. Think about the impact it will have on our daughter." The father tried to avoid making eye contact with his family as he left the house. Suddenly, Lisa burst out, "You're kicking us out. And I hate you. You're mean and bad." Fred only responded with a smirk, "Well done, girl, you've aligned yourself with your father right away. You handle your tongue quite skillfully, even better than your mother." For 4 long hours, they sped down the road, literally navigating through ruts and potholes they encountered on their way. The driver, named Chelsea, finally brought them to the long-awaited settlement. When the house where they were supposed to live with their daughter finally came into view, the mother experienced real stress. It was not just a dwelling, but a small, run-down cottage that could barely be called a home. The doors were moldy, the windows seemed crooked, the fence had long since collapsed, and the yard had turned into a wild tangle of weeds and shrubs. Lisa was completely bewildered and frightened, and she clung to her mother, sincerely hoping for her support. The driver unloaded their belongings and bid them farewell, saying, "Goodbye, Anna. I'm sorry for you. You're a good woman." The owner, it seems, doesn't understand what he's doing. "Here, take this, it will be useful for you and your daughter," and handed her a few bills. As they unloaded their belongings, a woman from the neighboring house named Chloe came out to find out what was happening. "I'll go and see who arrived this evening," she thought to herself and promised, "I'll be back." In her village, new residents were a rare occurrence, and now she saw a young woman dressed in expensive clothes and a 6-year-old girl with a backpack on her shoulder. Chloe quickly realized that they were in trouble. She spoke out and, addressing the newcomers, said, "Hello, beautiful. Don't cry, this is not the best place to spend the night. There's nothing but dust to breathe here. Come to my place, you can stay the night, and you'll tell me everything." "My name is Chloe, what's yours?" The woman replied, "My name is Lisa, and our dad kicked us out of our house and sent us here. That's why Mom is crying, he's mean and bad." The old woman shook her head and said, "What a tragedy. How could anyone bring such misfortune to this remote wilderness?" Without hesitation, she led her unexpected guests inside her home. Chloe set the table and heated the teapot. Her cozy dwelling was warm and inviting. She looked at the grief-stricken woman and delicately offered some soothing drops, saying, "Have some, and I'll make some mint tea. There's no need to cry." She then continued, "Tell me everything, how it happened. Maybe I can help in some way. After all, I too am alone, not by choice. My son left this world, they were just as vile as that snake. Now I live here alone. Don't worry, dear, you'll adjust as well. The people in this place are good and always ready to help." They calmed down a bit, and while Lisa happily ran off to play with her new friend, Ray, the old woman, as if by some force of fate, expressed her long-restrained feelings to Chloe. She truly needed someone to listen to her, so that the burden of resentment and disappointment wouldn't weigh too heavily on her. The old woman patiently listened, rarely interrupting, but occasionally sighing. Then she said, "Don't despair, Anna. Everything the Lord does always turns out for the best. You'll understand that with time. You say life has been hard. Instead of dwelling in sorrow, pull yourself together and start rebuilding this house. We, the neighbors, will help as best we can. It's fate's decree. Also, don't forget to visit the village council. Perhaps there's some work for you there. You're a smart and capable woman. There's a school here, and we'll send Lisa to study. Everything will work out, don't worry. After 2 weeks, they could finally spend a night in their own home. During that time, Lisa, Chloe, and another neighbor, Louie, worked diligently from early morning till late at night. They painted the fence, pulled out weeds, and tackled the stove. Winter was approaching, and they needed to prepare the house for the cold. Lisa took on the role of a mail carrier, even though it didn't align with her dreams, but they had to adapt to the circumstances. Life was gradually returning to order. Despite her initial fears, Lisa didn't miss her father at all. She even liked rural life, the open spaces, the river, ripe apples, and sweet cherries. Enjoy life, there's no need to complain, she thought, as if freeing herself from the constraints that had previously limited her vision of the future. Her cheeks gained a rosy hue, and her smile appeared more often on her face. One day, while she was delivering mail outside the village, she spotted a small, dirty puppy struggling for life right in a silo pit. It was desperately whimpering and begging for help. Anna immediately abandoned her bicycle and bag, rushing to the aid of the hapless puppy. She was willing to do anything to save the little furry friend. In no time, Rachel was waist-deep in the silo pit, covered in mud, but eventually, they managed to rescue the puppy. He continued to whimper and limped on his left paw. With the puppy in her arms, they made their way back to the house, hiding their precious find under their clothing. At the doorstep, she called out, "Look, Mom, who I saved. There's something wrong with its paw, it seems." Her daughter immediately understood the situation and, with mixed feelings of excitement and tenderness, she rushed to the puppy to provide assistance. Anna asked, "But what are we going to do? We don't have a nearby veterinary clinic. How will we nurse it back to health?" Lisa smiled and reassured her mother, "Don't worry, Mom. In a way, she's my little girl, and you go to work. I'll feed her, take care of her, and with Chloe, we'll figure out how to help the puppy." In the evening, upon returning home, Anna witnessed a heartwarming scene. In the yard, Lisa was playing with her new friend, a puppy with white fur and ginger spots. The puppy was a gift of fate, and it was diligently trying to lift the ball with its nose and pass it to Lisa. Laughter and joy filled the evening air. Lisa announced, "Mom, I've named her Brittany. She now lives with us because you found and saved her." Louie even made a bandage for her paw and said not to remove it for 3 weeks. "Look, she's smart, isn't she, Brittany?" Anna tossed the ball, and Brittany skillfully caught it with her nose. This brought immense pleasure and joy to the children. Lisa didn't push the puppy to perform complex tricks, but from time to time, they played music and danced together. In the village, they continued their education, and Lisa quickly excelled, always grasping the material and proving herself as a gifted student. Chloe watched in amazement at every one of their dances, marveling at how skillfully and gracefully they executed their moves. Her gaze was drawn to this captivating performance. Gradually, September arrived, and for Lisa, an important moment came. She started her 2nd grade. The school had already begun preparations for the upcoming autumn ball, and among the students, Lisa was chosen to participate in the competition. The girl was filled with happiness, and everyone around her wondered where her dancing talents came from. However, Lisa didn't even suspect that Chloe had orchestrated a secret turn of events for her. She detailed Lisa's virtuoso dancing to the school principal, and convinced him to include her in the competition. Chloe believed in the girl's potential and was ready to put in the effort to help her showcase her talent. The ball itself was a grand event with much glamour and splendor. An important visiting committee arrived for the occasion, and they actively scouted for talented children to include in their team. In this context, Lisa's mother began to worry, asking herself, "What am I going to perform in? I don't have a ball gown. Everyone else will surely be beautifully dressed, and I." However, Lisa always had an answer to such situations. She smiled and told her mother, "Don't worry, Mom, we'll find a solution together. We have time to work miracles." And so, the two of them began searching for a suitable dress in the closet. In one moment, Lisa pulled out a long-forgotten, but brightly red ball gown that her mother had given her many years ago. She had carried it with her everywhere as a reminder of her long-standing dream of becoming a dancer. This time, the dress turned out to be just what they needed. It perfectly accentuated her grace and gave her confidence, as if it was made for this important night. Her daughter, with her mouth agape in astonishment, couldn't hide her admiration, saying, "Mom, it's so beautiful. Is this your dress? But it seems to be very big for me." Her mother smiled and took out a small sewing machine from the closet, saying, "Yes, dear, it's my dress, but we have hands, and we can make it fit you, and maybe it will bring us both happiness." And so, they got to work. Her mother showcased her sewing skills, and with each stitch, the dress transformed. The red color perfectly emphasized her daughter's natural beauty. Lisa, with her vibrant brunette appearance and fiery personality, breathed new life into the dress. Now, it fit her perfectly. At the ball, Lisa performed brilliantly. Her dance was appreciated by both the audience and the judges, and she secured one of the top places. The entire hall applauded with admiration. But her mother wasn't just clapping her hands, she couldn't contain her emotions. Pride, affection, and nostalgia for her own dancing achievements brought tears of happiness to her eyes as she reminisced about her past performances and awards. This evening became not only a celebration for her daughter, but also a memory that brought her back to her own moments of glory and joy. Behind the stage, a tall and imposing man of around 45 years was slowly approaching them. His gray hair gave him a distinguished appearance. He walked with a noticeable limp in one leg, and his posture indicated that he had experienced a serious back injury. Slowly advancing, the man improved his manners and finally reached the group. With a gentle smile, he introduced himself. "Hello, is this your daughter? She performed the Viennese waltz beautifully. Who is her coach? This is one of the most professional performances I've ever seen. My name is Patrick. I am a member of the jury and the founder of the Toads Dance Studio. I won't surprise you by telling you once again, but perhaps you've heard of our studio." The parents of the girl looked at each other with admiration, and with joyful smiles, they replied, "Of course, not only have we heard of it, but we've also dreamt of our daughter becoming a part of your dance team one day." She is even blushing with joy. The woman, still feeling some excitement, added, "Hello, I myself dedicated many years to ballet and ballroom dancing, but unfortunately, I couldn't fulfill my dream of becoming a professional dancer. Now I'm glad to see that my daughter has found pleasure and talent in dancing. Thank you for your kind words, they mean a lot to us." With a smile, Patrick said, "Allow me to offer you an interesting opportunity. I am looking for a ballroom dance coach, and considering how well you've taught your 7-year-old daughter, I believe you have the potential. If you could teach her so brilliantly, then undoubtedly, you can handle older dancers as well. Besides, as you can see, I have some health issues, and my back troubles me. But I don't want to give up my business and my passion for dancing." Rachel felt herself blush and became even more embarrassed. "Are you sure I can handle this? I've never worked as a coach, and I'm not a professional." Patrick quickly replied, "I've been involved in ballroom dancing all my life and can distinguish professional moves from ordinary ones. We have to start somewhere, and I believe you can do it. If you agree, I'm ready to rent a cozy apartment for you near the studio, so you'll be comfortable." Soon, Lisa, who had been holding back her opinion until then, couldn't resist and joined the conversation. "Mom, of course, agree. Patrick, we're ready. Don't mind my mom, she's smarter than she appears, and she dances amazingly. She's just too shy." Patrick chuckled heartily. Children's words are always truthful. It seems that doubts have been dispelled now. "Mom, it's time to stop being afraid of everything in the world and start learning to make independent decisions. And your daughter is already eager to move forward." "All right, we agree." Rachel and her daughter moved to the city and settled into the apartment that Patrick had rented for them. It turned out to be cozy and charming, and they quickly adapted to their new surroundings. Rachel began teaching ballroom dance lessons to children. Surprisingly, working with children came easily and naturally to her. She never yelled at them and felt no inhibitions. The young dancers achieved their first successes, and their performances attested to her teaching talent, which she had seemingly inherited from Patrick. She found a special approach for each child, nurturing their individual skills. Over time, Rachel and Lisa became not only close but true friends. Patrick shared with them that a year ago, he was hit by a drunk driver at a pedestrian crossing, injuring his spine. Doctors insisted on an urgent surgery but warned that it was risky and might not yield the desired results. He suffered excruciating pain and agonized over the uncertainty of his fate. Under this heavy burden, Rachel confided in Patrick and shared her own difficulties and disappointments. She spoke of her failed career as a dancer and her unhappy married life, which she had long kept to herself. They spent long hours discussing dance, life, and their dreams, and Patrick became not only her trusted friend but also a listener, an advisor. Lisa also grew fond of Patrick and saw in him a friend and mentor, despite his lack of children. His experience and understanding of child psychology helped bring them even closer, and soon, their relationship began to resemble a real family. Rachel often reflected on how she didn't feel the same tenderness and excitement in her relationship with her husband that she felt with Patrick. There was passion, a whirlwind of emotions, but it soon turned into a sense of hopelessness and disappointment. In contrast, with Patrick, she found something extraordinary, deep emotional closeness, despite a noticeable age difference. He had qualities that reminded her of her father: intelligence, restraint, and incredible kindness. Her heart ached as she watched Patrick's health steadily deteriorate, and he could no longer do without a wheelchair. She put in all her efforts to care for him: injections, massages, rub-downs, but all of it only provided temporary relief. Radical measures were needed, and she convinced Patrick to undergo the surgery. One day, at the most inconvenient moment when she was engrossed in her activities, her phone suddenly rang. She answered the phone, and on the other end of the line, she heard Patrick's weak voice. "Rachel, hello. Can you come to me right now? I really need your help." Without a second thought, she immediately exclaimed, "I'll be there in 10 minutes," and hastily abandoned her current tasks. Her legs carried her to Patrick's mansion like a hurricane. Upon arrival, she noticed an ambulance, and her stomach churned with anxiety. When she entered the house, she saw Patrick's pale, exhausted face. For the first time in a long time, he was out of the picture, lying in bed, awaiting help. Doctors hurried around, doing their job. Patrick asked them to leave the room for a few minutes and spoke to her softly. "Something is very wrong, Anna. I've decided. They're taking me for surgery now. There's no way out. I don't know if I'll survive. You know my situation. Take the blue folder from the shelf. It's for you. It contains a deed. It transfers this mansion, the country house, the car, and all my belongings to you and your daughter. I'm alone, and I want it all to belong to you. I don't need it anymore. And remember, I've always loved you, from the moment I saw you. I know our ages are different, and I don't expect anything more. I just want you to know this." Anna held back the tears that would undoubtedly have welled up in such a moment. She said confidently, "Everything will be fine. You'll see. I believe in that. Thank you for everything. You're a true man." After Patrick was taken to the hospital, Anna didn't go with him, staying behind to wait with her daughter, Lisa, whom she had picked up from school. Sitting in the hospital corridor, they waited together for the results of the surgery. The street had long descended into the darkness of the night, and the doctor still hadn't emerged from the operating room. Exhausted from tension, they fell asleep, huddled together on the hard cot. A tired voice of a doctor woke them from their half-asleep and weightless state. "Don't torment yourselves, go home. The child needs proper rest. The surgery is over, but the prognosis is grim. Patrick has fallen into a coma. We'll maintain his condition as long as it remains critical. I did everything in my power." Stunned and despairing, they exchanged bewildered glances. Anna's eyes, filled with desperation and profound sorrow, welled up with tears. She dared to ask, "Doctor, please, allow me to just sit with him quietly. It's very important to me." The surgeon, initially inclined to object, softened upon seeing the immense longing and indescribable grief in those blue eyes. He waved his hand and said, "As you wish." 3 days. Patrick teetered between life and death, and Anna never left his bedside. She read books, gently stroked his hands, and endlessly whispered words when he wandered in delirium. Her prayers were unified. "Lord, help, allow him to survive. I beg you, I cannot live without him. I love him like no one and never have. Give us a little more time together on this earth." Through the fog and hazy consciousness, Patrick heard fragments of her confession of love and desperately tried to return to the world of wakefulness, but his eyes stubbornly refused to obey. Finally, at some point, he managed to crack open his eyelids, and before him appeared the sorrowful and exhausted Anna, with dark circles under her eyes. She slowly drifted off, holding his hand as the most precious treasure. In the corner of the room, their daughter, Lisa, sat quietly, sketching with a pencil. The first to notice that Patrick was beginning to wake up was Lisa. She didn't shout but whispered excitedly, "Mom, look, Patrick is waking up. Now everything will be okay." Anna looked up and gazed at the man. He gave her a heavy look, attempting to smile. Her hand tightened around his even more, and she whispered, "Thank you, oh my God. I've waited for this." The restless little girl rushed over to Patrick, holding her drawing. "Look, this is Mom, this is you, this is me, and here's our house, and Brittany the dog. Can we bring her back from the village? She misses it so much there. You know, she's so cute, she even knows how to fetch a ball in her mouth." Lisa chattered endlessly, but her words carried such sincerity and joy. In Patrick's heart, warmth spread, and he realized that he was no longer alone, that he had a real family. It turned out that being needed by someone was one of the most important feelings in the world. With each passing day, Patrick recovered, and Anna actively helped him in the rehabilitation process. Within a month, he could walk like a regular person, and the excruciating pain finally left his body. The three of them could no longer imagine life without each other. They moved into Patrick's mansion, and Brittany was brought back from the village, now with a luxurious kennel and the best food. One day, the whole family was dining in a cozy restaurant. The mood was fantastic, and they were all joking and having fun. However, out of the corner of their eyes, they noticed a few times that the deliveryman, who had brought boxes of supplies to the restaurant, was staring at Anna. She was surprised and said, "Why is this deliveryman looking at me so strangely? I don't think I know him." Lisa suddenly found the courage and frowned. "Mom, is this maybe my father by any chance? He just looks terrible." For the little girl, memories of the past abuse by Fred were too painful. She probably would have preferred not to have anything to do with him if she had her way. The restless little girl ran up to Fred and loudly asked, "Hi, are you my dad? Did you recognize your daughter?" Fred felt awkward and clumsy and began to justify himself. "Of course, I recognized you, Lisa. You've grown so much, turned into a real beauty. I just thought I shouldn't interfere with you." Lisa wouldn't be deterred. "Patrick, introduce yourself. This is my dad." "Well, he did kick us out of the house, right?" "Right, Mom." Lisa spoke incessantly. Fred suddenly found it hard to breathe, and his frayed nerves led him to angrily whisper to his daughter, "Lisa, my dear, let's go outside, and we'll talk there, without any outsiders. I'll explain everything to you." Summoning the last of his strength, he quickly made his way toward the restaurant's exit, feeling the gaze of the other diners on them. Following Fred, Patrick and Rachel also left the restaurant. Rachel's heart was pounding like a drum, and she couldn't leave her daughter alone with this monster, as she internally referred to him. Outdoors, attempting to remain calm, Rachel inquired, "Fred, how did you end up here? You're a businessman, a banker." There was a hint of displeasure in her voice. The man standing before her stammered and quickly began to recount his story. "You see, Kate ruined me worldwide. She pulled such a cunning scheme, even with her old man. I was left completely broke. They took my house due to debts. Now I work as a laborer, barely managed to get this job, in someone else's basement, no less. I don't even know what to do next." Rachel felt trapped, not knowing how to react to Fred's story. On one hand, her heart had not yet healed from all the painful moments she had endured because of this man. On the other hand, despite all the hardships, it was thanks to Fred that she had met Patrick, her current husband. Once again, as always, their resourceful daughter would determine the course of events. "Mom, let Dad live in the house he gave us. It's just sitting there empty anyway. He'll like it there," the girl cheerfully suggested, accompanying her proposal with a melodious laugh. Fred felt like her jest was aimed straight at him. Rachel calmly replied, "Live there if you want, I don't mind. This is my husband, Patrick." Fred admitted, reservedly, "You did well." With that, the conversation ended, and Rachel added with a smile, "Look at the success she's achieved. Posters with your performances are all over the city. Can I visit sometimes?" he asked. But then their daughter gave an unexpected answer, completely on her mother's side. "Do I need to ask if I want to see you? Don't visit me. I have nothing to talk to you about. I have a real dad, Patrick. He'll never hurt Mom or kick her out. Mom, let's go." We still wanted to find food for Brittany. Rachel's daughter playfully tugged at her hand. The three of them walked away from Fred, who found his share of irony in this unexpected situation. Lisa chatted merrily, Patrick laughed happily, and he held his daughter's hand tightly. Patrick felt waves of pain and distress washing over him. He bitterly said, "What an idiot I was, a self-absorbed peacock. What I lacked was a loving wife, a beautiful daughter, my own copy, and I lost it all for that vain Kate. And now my Lisa considers a stranger her father, loves him, and I'm completely unnecessary to her." From behind, a voice shouted, "Fred, where are you wandering? Do I have to do all the heavy lifting?" Fred grumbled and complained while his co-worker was frustrated by his absence. As the end of the shift neared, Fred, as usual, bought a bottle of alcohol and shared it with his partner, trying to drown his troubles in alcohol. They vented and lamented their unfair fate, and this was all that was left of Fred. Rachel walked, carrying her thoughts in her heart. What a blessing that Fred kicked me out back then. Otherwise, I would have suffered with him for a lifetime, she thought, recalling all those moments when she was a prisoner of her own fear and misery. Reaching Patrick, she pressed herself against him, feeling the warmth of his hand and the security of his presence. She whispered, "Thank you for everything, my love." Their steps sounded in unison, and in that moment, they knew that their family was their reliable shelter from life's storms and sorrows.